This week, I was able to learn Photoshop in a more in-depth way because as I used Photoshop before, but there were some techniques or features that I got to learn that relates to creating patterns. So it was something new to me, so I thought it was a good knowledge to keep. At the end of the day, we went to King Cross to learn about prints, and one of the tutors in CSM gave us an introduction on how print would work on fabrics and how we could use and what kind of print worked well on different fabrics. And she brought us through the heat press technique, where I got to learn how to use a more industrial machine, because I used to use heat presses that were quite tiny, which only allowed me to do quite a small piece. But with this industrial machine in CSM, I think it would really expand my types of experiment I could do and do a print on a huge piece of fabric and form it into a garment, rather than just doing it in a small piece. That limits my experimentations. On the following day, we were given induction on plastic and wood workshop, which I learned a lot in terms of using the machine and also the safety of using the machine. It was something quite new to me because I never thought of maybe using wood into fashion, but it could be something that sort of present my work well. Maybe a frame to be part of a prop in my presentation of my garment. And also plastic workshop, I was able to learn how to do plastic mold, which was really interesting. Like, for example, I could do a mold of a face, which is something quite solid, and sort of melt the plastic onto it to create sort of a shape of a mold of it. So it was quite interesting for me to observe and see and able to experience something new in my future projects, which I could use these two techniques, wood machines and plastic machines as well. On the next day, we were given an induction of a print workshop, but before that, we were separated into two groups, so we would have our own independent time where we continue our work. So I also learned how to manage my time within the free time that we were given, and I got to have tutorial with a tutor, which allows me to know where I am at my point of my sketchbook, and she would advise me on how I could improve or what is lacking in my sketchbook. And as for the print workshop, we were able to learn how to do etching print, which was something new to me. And this was the plastic sheet where we created our patterns and carved onto it and painted ink over it to print onto a piece of paper, which was interesting in the way how it prints, because we had to use sort of like a pulling thing that goes round like that, a pushing thing, which will sort of print the ink and the carved drawing that I did onto a piece of paper. And the paper, I learned that it need to be damp, a bit wet, so that the ink would stay. And it turned out quite interesting in terms of the outcome, and you can see a lot of textures and prints that are quite delicate. So I think that was something new to me that I appreciate learning on that day. This was my first outcome of the etching print project, which I thought was quite successful in terms of creating black and white space that were quite clear. And as you can't see through this video, but they were quite embossed, which was something interesting. And yeah, and this was my second outcome, where I sort of create more textures at the side of the print and creating more white creating more white space in the middle, where the black at the side brings out the middle part because it's white. And the textures are quite visible in terms if you see it in person. We had a casting workshop as well, where we are able to learn the mixture for casting an object. The ingredients to make the mixtures were quite precise in terms of the measurements, like how much water do we need to put, how much plaster we need to put, and how do we sort of mix the mixture as we need to create the perfect mixture, so that we don't have something quite lumpy or where it dries too quickly before we could even mold something. So it was something new for me, as I never done anything like sculptural in terms of molding. Lastly, for this week, the last workshop that we learned was the stitch workshop, where we were given an induction of how to use a sewing machine, how to use a knitting machine. I learned more about the knitting machine because sewing machine is something that I have experience using for quite some time. So knitting machine was something that I learned how to use more on that day. And there were a bit of difficulties threading the thread in the machine, but I think with a few more practice, I think I would be able to get more comfortable using with it. Something I think I should improve on this week would be developing on my sketchbook more, because I think I'm still a bit lacking of experimentations in my sketchbook. So in order to solve that problem, I think I should focus more time on my sketchbook in terms of laying them out on a sketchbook and putting them into order, because at the moment it's still not all pasted into my sketchbook, which is quite messy. So I should manage my time better in terms of doing my sketchbook and doing my information file, which is still a bit lacking of research. So I plan to do a few more this weekend and plan out everything, so everything will be in place, and I'll be ready for the following week, where we're going to make a final piece that represents our personal 2 weeks project.